Hi, my name is Brandon Reed. I ask myself sometimes, how could I survive living in a country with millions of people that I've never met who may speak a language that I don't know? This is a challenge that many Americans face when moving abroad. The business world is expanding globally where people will need to know how to communicate with those from other countries. More and more Americans are leaving the United States for work abroad, and it is important to know some of the challenges they are facing as they adapt to their new locations. I have extensively researched living and working abroad because I have considered doing this before I settle down and start a family. When Americans move abroad for work or play, they face a variety of cultural barriers, language barriers, and workplace communication problems that they must overcome to be successful. In this presentation, we are going to review the cultural barriers, language barriers, and workplace communication problems that many face when leaving the United States. Every country has cultural differences that may be different from the United States. It is important to understand these because of lack of knowledge could lead to some very embarrassing moments. For example, on page 2 of the PowerPoint I have included, in Mediterranean European countries, Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, it is normal or at least widely tolerated to arrive half an hour late for a dinner invitation. Whereas in Germany and Switzerland, this would be extremely rude. These cultural differences are important to understand because they could mean the difference between gaining a job promotion or not. Now that I've discussed cultural differences and why they are important to understand, we will look at how languages affect Americans moving overseas. Americans that leave the country to live overseas face a huge challenge, a huge language barrier challenge in many countries. These barriers can affect vital communication that is needed to be self-sufficient. For example, on page 3 of the PowerPoint that I've included, there's a reference. As of 2010, the European Union has 23 official languages. This is a huge amount of languages for one continent, and it shows just how many different languages there are around the world. On page 4, I have also included a map that highlights the different languages spoken in Europe by country and how many people speak them. It is important to understand the language that you are. It is important to understand a language when moving to a country that uses that language. Now that we have discussed the language barriers that Americans face when moving overseas, we will now review the challenges that could arise in the workplace. Working overseas can create a variety of challenges in the workplace that would never arise in America. It is important to understand what may happen to prepare for overcoming these challenges. For example, on page 5 of the PowerPoint, I have included an example of a workplace communication problem that happened in Australia. Another person did not understand that chatting with colleagues at lunchtime and tea breaks was important in Australia, as socializing at work is a means through which Australians foster good terms and strong bonds with each other. Small talk is not easy and requires a good understanding of the culture and language. However, knowing just a few simple phrases and responses, which can be practiced at home, can make an enormous difference to how a person is perceived. While this may not be a concern in America, it is very important in Australia. A worker must understand these subtle differences so they can easily transition into their new position. Overall, Americans face many challenges living and working overseas. First, I discussed some cultural differences that can arise. Second, I explored language barriers that can affect basic communication. Finally, I have given an example of a workplace communication issue and talked about how and why an effort should be made to understand these challenges. It can help the workplace transition become much easier. When Americans move abroad for work or play, they face a variety of challenges, including cultural barriers, language barriers, and workplace communication problems that they must overcome to be successful. Living in a new country can lead to a variety of challenges, but overcoming these challenges can lead to the adventure of a lifetime. Are there any questions? Thank you for your time and attention.